does educational psychology assessment look like?
Yeah.
What would it constitute?
And that's difficult to answer because it could look like a lot of different things. It sort of depends on what you're trying to find out, what the assessment question is.
Yeah.
So we would start, I think, by asking the person who's asking for the assessment. We'd have a discussion about what are we trying to do here, how will this add to what you already know.
Yes, and it's about us joining that already existing assessment process through the child's
Yeah.
planning
Mhm.
meeting through the Highland practice model, and we're adding into that in the kind of unique role of the educational psychologist, if you like. So yeah, so I would
Yes.
agree with you. It's about going back to the person who's requesting that assessment and saying, so what is the question, what information is it that you're looking to find out?
How is it going to be used? Because you
Yes.
don't want to do an assessment over here that neither relates to what everybody else is doing or is going to actually be used, because that would be an intrusion in the child's life for no reason.
I think for me, assessment is gathering information. Having established that question, deciding what information needs to be gathered, usually in context. So, that would often involve going into a classroom and doing some observation, checking with teachers what they're expecting me to see, and conferring with the teacher. The gathering information might be asking for assessments that have been done in school, to add to that information.
Yes.
And again, having a conversation about that and chipping in our bit
Yes.
as psychologists.
Yes.
And the assessment might not be as in particularly seeking new information, it is often as working with the information which is already there, but helping other people make sense of that information. So what might that mean then? What's that telling us? These are the behaviours you're seeing, or this is what the young person is working at the moment. And so it's about what does this mean for us then?
Yes.
Joining that process that's already existing
Yeah.
and helping.
It might be asking solution-focused questions,
Yes.
like, so he looks very upset all the time, but there must be a time that he's not. What's happening then? And looking for solutions as well as just gathering the information. You're trying to edge towards,
Yes.
okay, so what can we do about his behaviour or his learning or whatever it is you're being asked to assess?
I think the assessment also would take place over time as well, so
Yes.
it's not going to be just a one-off.
No.
It'll tend to be gathering information,
Yes.
meetings with relevant people to chat about that information.
Yes.
So some of the assessment might actually take place, and the gathering of information through those conversations.
Yes.
And trying to be explicit with parents and teachers that that's what you're doing. Asking the child as well themselves might be part of it. We do work with individual children, groups of children as well, to try and contribute to that information gathering.
Yes. Maybe a more neutral person asking for their views, or asking for their views using different strategies, different ideas. We might do that, which adds, as you say, over time, it adds to the picture really.
What is important in educational psychology assessment is always having that young person at the centre of anything that we're doing. So remembering that they're central to this process, and that's right at the very start, I guess, when we're seeking consent, but also making sure that the young person's views are heard. Because I think sometimes, especially if a situation is messy or people around the young person are not quite sure where they're going, and sometimes those views are not always heard, or they are heard but maybe they're not represented. So that's a key role of educational psychologists as well.
We might do an assessment around learning as well. We might do, again, through a structured discussion around different abilities and where the child's at in that sort of area. We might cooperate with the ASN teacher and look at what she's doing. We might have a discussion around that.
Sometimes teachers and ASN teachers ask us to look at their assessments that they've done, because they want to help with interpreting the results. So that would be, again, done within the context of other information that we might have about the child.
Yeah, that has to be done, doesn't it, over time, and the contextual stuff. What's happening for the child out with their learning, or as well as the learning, or out with their behaviour. So you're going down layers of what's going on for the child, trying to unpick that. You might do looking at settings, looking at what's happening as a result of the behaviour. There's all sorts of things we might do.
And contextual information is an important one there as well, because I think there's something very powerful about gathering the information from where a young person is day in, day out, from where they feel comfortable, where they're surrounded by their peers, where they're presented with, hopefully what they would experience on a day-to-day basis within their own environment. And I think sometimes that can be quite different from how a young person will respond within a very structured assessment situation. So you both talked about supporting ASN teachers and class teachers with their assessment information, and I think sometimes that it's best when that information is gathered by someone that the young person knows. They know what their role is, and they understand why they might be gathering that information. Whereas sometimes, because sometimes we'll be asked to do standardised assessments or cognitive assessments as part of our role, and I think that immediately when you are put in a situation where you're then on a one-to-one with an educational psychologist or somebody else who is within a setting that you don't really have that great relationship with,
or it's the first time you're meeting,
or it's the first time you're meeting them, and then they're asking you kind of lots of questions about different things, and the way that of course that a lot of these standard assessments are set up, that you continue to ask the questions until the young person can no longer answer those questions, and the young person will be very aware they cannot answer those questions. So after a certain number of getting them wrong or not being able to answer, then you move on to the next set of questions, and of course it's multiple times that you're putting a young person through that, which can be quite difficult for them.
So that needs to be weighed up with the discussion that you've had. How is this going to inform teaching and learning, or how is it going to inform something that's going to be shaped around a child? It has to be used. So yes, it's quite an intrusive process, but it needs to have a real benefit to it. And that needs to be explicit at the beginning. Everybody needs to have thought about that.
Absolutely. And before you enter into that process, there's a question about, is there another way that we could gather better information? Or similar information to help us with that assessment process?
You done?
I think we're